This isn't just another testimony, it's one that unsettles assumptions and makes you reconsider what you've always believed. Take your time with it. Watch closely. What you'll see is not hype or empty words, but a raw story of how the love of Jesus dismantles false securities and opens the door to the kind of freedom every heart longs for. My name is Shamsiya. I was the wife of an imam in Morocco, a man known for his deep voice and long prayers. Our home was close to the old mosque, with walls painted white and blue like the sea. Every morning, the call to prayer filled the air, and I felt proud to be the wife of a respected teacher of the Quran. But inside me, there was a quiet emptiness that I could never explain. My days were always the same. I cooked, washed, and taught my daughters, Layla and Samira, how to recite the holy verses. My husband spent most of his time at the mosque, studying and teaching others. We hardly spoke about feelings or dreams. He was kind in public but strict at home. There were rules for everything: what we could wear, what we could read, what we could even think about. One hot afternoon, while cleaning his study room, I found an old wooden box under a pile of dusty books. The lock was broken, and I opened it without much thought. Inside was a small brown book written in Arabic. I thought it was another Quranic text, but the title caught my eye. It said, "The Injil, the Good News of Isa al-Masih." I froze for a moment. I had heard of the Injil before, but I had never seen one. Curiosity burned inside me. I sat down and began to read. The first story I opened to was about a woman who was caught doing wrong, and how Isa did not let her be punished but forgave her and told her to live rightly. My hands trembled. I had never heard anyone speak about forgiveness that way before. My heart beat fast, as if something warm touched me inside. I closed the book quickly and hid it under my scarf when I heard footsteps. That night I could not sleep. I kept thinking about what I had read, about mercy, about forgiveness, about Isa who showed love instead of judgment. I wanted to know more, but fear sat heavy in my chest. If my husband found out I had touched that book, I knew what it could mean for me. The next morning, as the call to prayer echoed through the city, I looked at the small box again. Something deep within whispered that this book was not a mistake I found. It was a message. The next few days, I could not stop thinking about the small brown book I had found. Every time I walked past my husband's study, my heart beat faster. I felt as if something inside that box was calling me, not with a loud voice, but softly, like a thought that would not leave. One evening, after everyone had gone to sleep, I tiptoed into the study with a small oil lamp. The house was quiet except for the sound of the wind brushing the window. I opened the book again. My eyes fell on words that spoke of Isa healing people, touching the sick, and bringing comfort to those who were forgotten. I kept reading until tears filled my eyes. I had always known religion as rules, things to do and things not to do. But what I was reading felt different. It spoke about love, peace, and forgiveness. It spoke about a man who cared for the poor and the broken. Something deep inside me began to change. From that night, I began to read the Injil secretly whenever I had the chance. I hid it under the carpet near the wall where no one would think to look. During the day, I would think about the stories. At night, I would quietly open the book and read. My daughters, Layla and Samira, noticed that I was quieter than before. One night, Layla asked me softly, "Mother, what are you always reading?" I hesitated. Then I looked into her eyes, so curious and gentle, and I decided to tell them. I took the book out and said, "This is a very old book about Isa, the prophet of peace." They sat beside me, wide-eyed, listening as I read to them about how Isa calmed the storm and told his friends not to be afraid. My daughters loved the story. They asked me to read again the next night, and I did. Soon, we began whispering short prayers together. We didn't know how to pray like the people in the stories, but we said, "Isa, if you are real, show us your truth." Each time we prayed, a strange calm filled our little room. Even the air felt lighter. I could not explain it, but it was real. One night, as I was closing the book, I felt something, Not a sound, not a dream, but an understanding deep inside me. It was as if he revealed to me that he was near, that he heard me, and that he loved me more than I had ever known. I covered my face with my hands and cried quietly so that my husband would not hear. From that moment, I knew this secret reading was no longer just curiosity. It was the beginning of a journey that would change everything I had ever known. As the days passed, our small secret became the brightest part of our lives. Each evening, after my husband left for late prayers at the mosque, my daughters and I would sit close together in my room. I would light the oil lamp, bring out the Injil, and read in a low voice so no one could hear us through the thin walls. Layla would lean on my shoulder, and Samira would rest her head on my lap, listening quietly. The stories we read became like food for our hearts. We read how Isa helped the blind see, how he forgave his enemies, and how he cared for little children. My daughters began asking questions I could hardly answer. "Mother, why does he love everyone like that? Even bad people?" I told them softly, "Because his love is not like ours. It is from heaven." Layla, the older one, began copying verses into her small notebook. She said it made her feel close to Isa. Samira would sometimes kneel beside her bed and whisper little prayers before sleeping. I would watch her, tears quietly filling my eyes. My home used to be filled with rules and fear. But now, in our secret moments, there was peace. One afternoon, as I washed clothes in the courtyard, I heard my daughters singing softly in their room. When I listened closely, I realized they were singing about Isa being the light of the world. My heart swelled with joy but also fear. The walls had ears, and the neighbors often gossiped. If anyone heard them, it could bring trouble not only to me but to the whole family. That night, I told them gently, "My loves, we must be careful. What we have is precious, but not everyone will understand." Layla nodded, but I could see a little sadness in her eyes. She said, "But mother, if this truth brings peace, why must we hide it?" I couldn't find the right words. I only knew that the world around us would not accept it easily. Later that same night, as I prayed silently, I felt something stir within me again, a deep awareness. It was as if he let me know that faith sometimes grows best in quiet places, even when surrounded by danger. I understood then that this was not only my journey anymore. My daughters were walking it with me, and one day, it would cost us something. Still, I chose not to fear. I only prayed for courage, that whatever came, our hearts would not turn away from the one who was revealing himself to us little by little through the words of that hidden book. It happened on a quiet evening I will never forget. The sun was setting, and the sky was golden red. My husband, the Imam, had come home earlier than usual. I didn't expect him, so I was reading from the Injil with my daughters in the sitting room. We were talking about how Isa healed a sick girl, and my daughters were smiling, their eyes full of light. Then I heard the door open. His deep voice called out my name. My hands froze. The girls' faces turned pale. I quickly closed the book and hid it under a cushion, but my heart was already racing too fast. He stepped into the room, his eyes scanning everything like he always did. "What are you doing?" he asked. I forced a smile and said we were studying together. He nodded slowly, but his eyes caught the edge of the brown cover peeking out from under the cushion. He reached for it before I could stop him. The moment his eyes saw the title, everything changed. His face turned dark, his lips tightened, and silence filled the room. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. My daughters started to cry. I tried to speak, but no words came out. My voice trembled when I finally said, "It was here, in your study. I only read it out of curiosity." He slammed the book on the table, shouting that it was forbidden, a lie from the unbelievers. He turned to the girls and said they must never speak of it again. Then he looked at me with anger I had never seen before. "You have brought shame to this house," he said. I tried to tell him that the story spoke of peace and forgiveness, but he shouted louder, saying those words were poison meant to turn people away from the true faith. That night, he locked the study door and took the book with him. My daughters cried themselves to sleep, and I sat in the dark, shaking. I felt both sorrow and strength at the same time. I wanted to believe that maybe his anger would pass, but deep down, I knew something had broken that could not be fixed easily. Later, when I closed my eyes, I felt something within me again. It was not a voice but a clear knowing. He let me know that this path would be painful, but I must not lose hope. I must not fear the darkness because the light I had found was not from this world. The next morning, the whole house was silent. My husband barely spoke to me. I went about my chores as if nothing had happened, but inside, my heart prayed without words. I prayed that somehow, one day, he too would understand what we had seen in those pages. But I did not know then that things were only beginning, and that our small faith would soon lead us into a storm we could not avoid. The days after that discovery felt long and heavy. My husband no longer looked at me the same way. His eyes, once calm and thoughtful, now carried suspicion and anger. He stopped allowing me to visit my friends and told the girls they could no longer play outside the house. He began locking the gate when he left for the mosque. It felt as though our home had become a cage. One evening, I overheard him speaking on the phone with another imam. His voice was low but sharp. He said things like, "She must be corrected," and "This shame cannot stay hidden." My heart dropped. I knew what those words could mean. I had heard stories of women being punished for less. I went into my room and fell to my knees, whispering, "God, help me." As I prayed, a calmness came over me. It wasn't loud or sudden. It was like a soft assurance deep within. He revealed to me that I should not stay, that I must protect my daughters and leave before harm came. That night, when the house was quiet, I called my cousin Layla. She was kind and had once worked with a Christian woman at a school. I told her everything, my voice shaking. She was silent for a moment, then said softly, "You must go, Shamsiya. Come to me tomorrow night. I will help you find safety." I didn't sleep that night. I packed quietly, only clothes for the girls, a few coins, and a small photo of us taken long ago when life still seemed simple. The next morning, my husband acted distant, but said nothing. The whole day I moved like a shadow, pretending everything was normal while praying in my heart for strength. When night came, I waited until he left for the mosque's late prayer. I woke Layla and Samira and whispered that we were going on a journey. They didn't ask many questions. They only nodded, holding tightly to my hands. We stepped out quietly into the cool night air. The streets were empty except for a few cats wandering near the walls. My heart pounded with both fear and courage. Halfway down the road, Layla looked up and whispered, "Mother, are we running away?" I paused, then said, "We are running toward peace." She didn't ask again. We reached Layla's house safely. She took us in with tears in her eyes and locked the door behind us. She gave the girls warm milk and told me that by morning, someone from a Christian mission would come to help us go farther away, to a place where my husband and the mosque elders could not find us. As I lay down beside my daughters that night, I felt sorrow for the life we were leaving behind, but also gratitude for the freedom ahead. I could feel deep inside that he was guiding each step, even when I didn't know where the road would end. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to be part of this journey. Our community is growing, and it's filled with people who, like you, are searching for truth and hope. Also, as you listen to this powerful testimony of transformation, we'd love for you to be part of the conversation. Share where you're watching from and what stands out to you in this journey. Your thoughts and reflections aren't just comments. They help shape a genuine dialogue around experiences that have the power to change lives. Before dawn, a soft knock came at the door. It was a woman wearing a headscarf and long coat. Layla whispered that her name was Miriam and that she worked with a small group of believers who helped women in danger. Miriam's voice was gentle, yet her eyes showed courage. She told us we needed to move quickly before the city woke. We stepped into the cool morning darkness. The streets were quiet, and the call to prayer had not yet begun. The girls held my hands tightly as we walked through narrow alleys toward the bus station. I looked back at the city that had been my home all my life. The tall minarets, the stone walls, the smell of bread from the bakeries, and I felt a deep ache in my chest. But at the same time I felt peace. It was as if he let me know that though I was leaving everything familiar, I was not leaving alone. When we reached the small station outside the city, Miriam bought 3 tickets to a town in the mountains. She sat with us on the bus, covering her face with a veil so no one would recognize her. The ride was long and bumpy. My daughters leaned against me and slept most of the way. I stayed awake, whispering silent prayers, asking for protection. I thought of my husband and the anger that might fill the mosque once they found out we were gone. Fear tried to rise in me, but each time it did, a quiet strength replaced it. By evening, we reached a small town surrounded by rocky hills. Miriam led us through winding paths to a modest house made of clay bricks. Inside, a kind elderly couple welcomed us warmly. They didn't ask many questions. They just offered food, blankets, and soft words. I remember how strange it felt to be treated with such kindness by strangers. That night, as I sat on a mat near the small window watching the moon, I thought of all that had happened. Only weeks ago, I was the wife of a respected imam, living in comfort but without peace. Now I was hiding in a distant place, not knowing what tomorrow would bring, yet feeling a freedom I had never known. As I sat quietly, I sensed again that gentle presence I had felt before. It wasn't a dream or a voice, but a deep knowing inside me. He let me know that our journey was not just about escaping danger, it was about finding truth, finding a new life that no one could take from us. When I looked at my daughters sleeping peacefully beside me, I whispered, "Thank you for bringing us this far." For the first time in many years, I felt that the fear which had always followed me was beginning to fade away. The next morning, I woke to the sound of birds singing outside the window. The air was cool and fresh, and for the first time in a long time, I felt safe. The elderly couple who had welcomed us, whom I later came to know as Father Youssef and Mama Lena, treated us like family. They served us warm tea and bread and told us that we could stay as long as we needed. My daughters quickly grew fond of the place. There was a small garden behind the house where flowers bloomed even in the dry season. Layla helped Mama Lena water the plants every morning, while Samira chased butterflies between the small trees. The laughter of my children was like a healing song after so many days of fear. Father Youssef gave me an Arabic Bible, the same as the Injil I had once found. I held it with both hands, feeling as if I was holding something sacred and alive. I began to read it every morning when the sun was rising. Each page seemed to speak directly to my heart. I understood more clearly who Isa truly was, the one who came to show the love of God to all people, not only a prophet but the bridge between heaven and earth. As the days went by, we joined a small group of believers who gathered secretly in different homes each week. They prayed together, sang softly, and shared their struggles and joys. When I first entered their gathering, I was nervous. I had never seen people worship like that before. Some lifted their hands, some cried, some smiled with peace on their faces. I didn't understand everything, but I felt something real there. In that moment, deep within me, I sensed his presence again. It was as if he let me know, "You are home now." I wept quietly, not from sadness, but from a joy I could not explain. After some weeks, Layla and Samira began reading the Bible stories themselves. They loved the part where Isa told his friends to be lights in the world. One evening, Layla said, "Mother, maybe one day Father will see the light too." I smiled sadly but nodded. "Yes, my dear," I said. "We will keep praying for him. Nothing is impossible for God." Each night as I watched my daughters sleep peacefully, I thanked God for bringing us into this new beginning. We had lost our home, our comfort, and the life we once knew, but what we found was far greater. We found truth, peace, and love that no one could take away. Still, deep inside, I knew that peace was not the end of our story. There would be more challenges ahead, because truth often comes with a cost. But now I had something stronger than fear. I had faith. Several months passed, and our new life in the mountain town began to feel settled. My daughters went to a small community school where they learned not only reading and writing, but also stories of kindness and forgiveness. We helped in the garden and sometimes cooked meals for others who came seeking shelter, just as we once had. Peace filled our days. But one evening, something unexpected happened that stirred my heart again. I had gone out to fetch water from the nearby well. The air was still, and the sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky orange. As I walked back home, I felt that same familiar stirring deep within me, gentle but strong. It was not fear, not even surprise, but an awareness. He revealed to me that our time of hiding would not last forever, that one day, I would have to return to the city we had fled. My first thought was, no, it's too dangerous. I wanted to stay where it was safe, far from anger and judgment. That night, I prayed long and quietly. I told God about my fear and my weakness. As I prayed, I felt Him letting me know that the truth we had found was not meant to be hidden forever. He was preparing me for something greater, not to argue or to prove anything, but to shine quietly, to be light even among those who once hated me. When I told Father Youssef about what I felt, he listened patiently. He said, "Shamsia, sometimes God sends us back, not because it is easy, but because someone there still needs to see His light through you." His words rested deeply in my heart. I shared it with my daughters. Layla was silent for a while, then said, "Mother, I am not afraid if you are not." Samira hugged me tightly and whispered, "Will we see Father again?" I nodded slowly. Maybe one day, if God wills it. The days that followed were filled with both hope and questions. I didn't know how or when we would return, but I began to prepare quietly, not packing bags, but strengthening my heart. I read the Psalms every morning and found peace in words that spoke of God's protection. One early morning, while sitting near the window, I saw the first light of dawn breaking through the clouds. It reminded me of the day I first opened the Injil, the day light began to touch my darkness. I realized then that our journey was not only about escaping harm or finding safety, it was about learning to trust that the same God who led us out would one day lead us back for His purpose. I didn't tell the girls, but I started writing letters of forgiveness and prayer for my husband. I didn't know if I would ever send them, but writing them helped heal the bitterness in my heart. Slowly, I began to hope that the same Jesus who had found me could one day reach him too. One afternoon, about a year after we had settled in the mountain town, news reached us through a trader who came from the city. He mentioned hearing about an imam whose wife and daughters had vanished suddenly. The imam, he said, had been searching for them for months, asking people in nearby towns, visiting police stations, and sending letters to different regions. When I heard this, my heart stopped for a moment. I knew it was him, my husband. For days I could not rest. Old memories returned. His voice, his anger, but also his moments of gentleness, the way he used to recite with calm precision, the care he had once shown before fear took it all away. I wondered what drove him to search. Was it love, or shame, or a wounded pride? Perhaps all three. Weeks later, a man came to the safe house where we stayed. He was from the city and had once attended my husband's mosque. He recognized me from a distance but spoke with kindness. He said, "Your husband has changed. Since you left, he no longer preaches with anger. He spends nights alone in the mosque, weeping. People say he asks many questions about Isa, the one you spoke of." Tears filled my eyes. Could it be true? Could the same fire that once burned with anger now be melting into something new? I didn't know what to think. That night, I prayed more than I had in a long time. I didn't ask for safety or blessings, only that truth would find him, just as it had found me. A few weeks later, while reading quietly in the garden, I felt that familiar sense of presence again. It wasn't loud or visible, but a deep understanding. He let me know that my husband's heart was being touched, that the same light which found me in fear was now reaching him in his sorrow. I couldn't stop the tears that rolled down my cheeks. I didn't go back to the city right away, but I began sending short messages through trusted people. I told him we were safe, that I had found peace, and that I still prayed for him. I didn't write about where we lived or what we did. I only wrote words that carried love and forgiveness. My daughters, now growing older, asked me if Father would ever come to believe as we did. I smiled and said, "Faith is like a seed. You cannot force it to grow, but when the right rain falls, it begins to live." Each passing day, I carried less fear and more hope. I began to see how God had been weaving our story, even through pain and distance. What once felt like a tragedy was becoming a testimony, not only for me and my daughters, but also for the man who once called me his greatest disgrace. It has now been many years since that night when my daughters and I left our home in fear. We live quietly in another city, helping others who are searching for truth and peace. My daughters are grown now. They still read the Bible each morning and pray with joy that fills our little home. Sometimes we receive letters from my husband. His words have softened over the years. He writes about dreams that bring him comfort and about questions he never thought he would ask. I believe that the same Jesus who found me will finish his work in him, in his own time. When I look back, I see how each part of our journey had a purpose. The fear, the loss, the hiding, they were not wasted. They were steps that led us closer to God. There were moments when I wanted to give up, when it felt easier to return and pretend nothing had ever happened. But each time, deep within, I would sense his quiet reminder that the light I had found was not meant to be hidden again. My story is not about bravery. I was afraid many times. It is about grace, about how God can reach into the most unexpected places, even into the home of an Imam's wife, and bring light where there was once only duty and silence. To every believer who reads or hears my story, I want to say this: your journey with God will not always be easy. Sometimes you will face misunderstanding, rejection, or loneliness. But do not let your heart grow cold. Keep praying. Keep loving. Keep trusting. What begins in secret faith can one day become a story that changes lives. If you have found peace in Christ, share that peace through kindness, not argument. Let your life speak louder than your words. And when it feels as if God is silent, remember, He is still working even in the shadows. Study His Word daily. Pray sincerely, even if you don't have perfect words. Love one another deeply, for love is the true mark of those who belong to Him. And never forget, the same Jesus who found me, who healed my daughter's fears, and who softened the heart of my husband, is still alive, still calling, still changing hearts everywhere. This is my testimony. I was once lost in the comfort of religion but found life in the love of Jesus. My daughters and I still walk in that light today, one prayer at a time.